Hey everybody, today I wanted to start off with a couple of quotes from the Tao Te Ching. Um, it was something that I was thinking about yesterday as I was at church. There was someone that talked about swimming against the current and the state of the world that we live in, and I thought that it was curious that that phrase was used because it made me think of the Tao in the opposite way. That in the Tao, you're supposed to kind of live yourself in accordance with nature and go with the flow. And sometimes it's talked about like water, being like a river. So I'd just like to share this quote. Um, it says, "The highest goodness is water. A person of great virtue is like the flowing water. Water benefits all things and contends not with them. The highest goodness is like water. Water easily benefits all things without struggle, yet it abides in place that men hate. Therefore it is like the Tao. For dwelling the earth is good, for mind depth is good, the goodness of giving is the timing, the goodness of speech is in honesty. In government self-mastery is good, in handling affairs ability is good. If you do not wrangle, you will not be blamed." But throughout the Tao Te Ching, it talks about being in accordance and flow with nature, being in flow with water, and being in flow like a stream. And I think because I've lived more in accordance to those teachings and to that wisdom, I've struggled and wrestled less with aspects of my life that I thought I had to take control of. And I think part of being raised in the Mormon church is that you're trying to impose control and order upon the environment that you're living in, usually by, something like the covenant path, or where you're trying to do ordinances and do external actions and in preparation like it's going to fulfill something in the future. And the thing that I like about Eastern philosophy is that it's focused very much on the present moment. What can you do in the present moment? And actually, what do you not do in the present moment? How do you go about your life in a state of doing nothing or inaction? Being able to act without actually acting. And I think that that's part of the process of the spiritual journey, is learning that you can't impose control or you can't impose order upon the world. You have to allow yourself to um, observe the world. You have to allow yourself to spiritually flow with the natural course of life. And sometimes that deals with, you know, recognizing the systems and organizations and religions that are trying to pretty much swim against the flow of the river, um, by always, doing a list of actions, like, whether it's um, something like, uh, you know, it's always in a state of external action, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think for the Western world, it's always about taking action as an internal reminder of taking care of yourself. But I think in Eastern philosophy, it's more about turning inward, and then once you turn inward, then you can start to kind of navigate the outward world by turning inward and also going with the flow of nature. Being like water, going like a going like a stream, being able to go with the flow of the stream. So I just thought it was curious wording that was used in church about swimming against the stream or swimming against the river. And I thought, it's just not how I think about life like that anymore. Um, I wanted to make a comment about it, but I just kind of let the flow of the river go that day. But I just thought that maybe I'd kind of like to express it now. And you know, I realize that I can see the perspective about trying to swim against the stream. But I've usually found that I've found myself in a state of self-sabotage when I try to control my environment, or when I try to control my circumstances. It usually always goes against me. So usually what I try to do is I try to, you know, wake up and take one step at a time to kind of observe my surroundings and see what I can do for the day, where I'm not going to, you know, have to confront the least amount of resistance. Because I think in the Western world, we kind of think that the more resistance that we get, the better. The more that we fight and resist, the better that we are. And I've actually found that to be the opposite. That when you live in accordance with nature, you realize that you just have to let it be. Just like that Beatles song. You have to let it be. You have to let nature take its natural course, and you know, and that obviously doesn't mean that you have to necessarily live a passive life, but it just means that you have to be uh, less compulsive about trying to control the world that you live in, and trying to allow things naturally take its course. And I've noticed with certain religions, like the one that I grew up in, tries to impose a certain amount of control and order upon the members that participate. And I think what would work more effective for the congregation is to be able to complement and cultivate the natural inclinations of the individuals that are striving to be more like Christ, and trying to do it by the steps that are that they're able to understand and they're able to naturally flow with, because there are certain ways to naturally come closer to God, or naturally come closer to Christ. But I think, Western religions sometimes think that you have to kind of flow, you have to swim against the stream, you have to swim against the current of the world. And maybe that's what they're trying to refer to as, the state of affairs that the world is in right now, that we should be swimming against the current. Um, but I think probably a person who's truly wise will be able to work within, be able to navigate within the world that they live in, and flow with it rather than trying to resist against it. Because usually resisting implies opposition, and opposition implies aggression, and aggression implies a degree of, fear, and a degree of frustration, and it just cultivates all these, feelings and emotions that aren't necessarily natural. And I even think to myself, like, there's some good things to be learned from the Christian religion when it comes down to being humble and being more compassionate and selfless, and trying to be able to be more like a healer, to be able to heal yourself and heal other people in your life. And I resonate with that strongly. But then at the same time, I think my concern is that we focus so much on, you know, the person that has saved humanity as, going through this perpetual state of suffering. And, I just don't see his life like that, not his present life. We always kind of revisit the passion and the crucifixion. And I don't think that that's what Jesus was trying to strive towards. He was trying to strive towards teaching us about, having compassion and love and understanding, and also faith and hope. And I think that suffering doesn't really lend itself to faith and hope. I feel like it's the opposite. I think enduring through suffering uh, is something that's good. Being able to have faith and hope that you can endure through it and make it out on the other side. But having this strange relationship between Jesus' suffering and getting some cathartic release from it is very strange to me. And I think that, nothing against Mormonism or Catholicism or any other religion that focuses on his suffering, but I think people have a tendency to do it because maybe they somehow get catharsis from it or healing from it. But, if anything, I think it's a reminder that, he lived a human life before he, culminated in, living, in his divine form. Um, and so I think people can relate to that. Um, but I think there's so much focus on, his suffering and his death that we don't focus on the fact that he overcame death and he was resurrected. And that in that regard, that's what we should focus on in this life, is being able to endure and persevere like him, and know that, suffering is inevitable for all of us, but it doesn't have to be a way of life. Just like, you know, all of our states and conditions and emotions that we have are transient. They're not permanent. Um, they come and they go. One moment you can be happy and the next moment you can be sad. But then that sadness that you're dealing with, that doesn't last. You eventually, you're able to come out of it the other side and find the silver lining again. Even for people like myself that has dealt with clinical depression, um, even I would say, even if you're clinically depressed, you can have moments where you can see a silver lining, where you can see hope and you can have faith and you can be optimistic. And you can have moments like that where it can last. It's just a matter of cultivating that happiness and that joy within your life. And I think the thing that I find the most peaceful and serene about my surroundings about my life is being able to just observe nature, being able to observe the blue sky and the trees, and how the trees flow in the breeze, and how everything just flows into one thing, into one, you know, nature lives in accordance with flow. And I think if we lived more in accordance with the natural flow of life, we'd be able to be a lot more happier and a lot more content and a lot more um, wanting to share that happiness and joy with other people. And, I find that in religion, some churches I think teach about, you know, the pursuit of happiness and being able to surrender to the moment. But I think other churches try to, swim against the current and feel like they feel like they're constantly wrestling with God, like Jacob, like Israel. And I think maybe that's a Western thing. That's a Western concept, because Eastern philosophy and Eastern religions it's really not about wrestling. It's about being able to allow yourself to be still, to be at one with nature, to be at one with your internal compass. And, I think that's what I think about all the time. I think that's just pretty much all I wanted to share. And I hope everyone has a good rest of the day.